So today I'm going to present the overview of Slovenian control programs for cattle disease, non-regulated by the European Union, that was done in collaboration with my colleagues from the veterinary faculty, University of Ljubljana in Slovenia. So first, a little about the cattle population in Slovenia. We have just under 500,000 cattle in just roughly under 30,000 herds. The cattle density is 23 cattle per square kilometer, and the average herd size is about 17 cows per herd. The cattle system, so mostly there are non-dairy herds, but about 1/5 are dairy herds, but the dairy herds are bigger, and actually there's more dairy cattle than non-dairy cattle. Most of the farms are family owned, so over 89%. And in the last year, the number of holdings is decreasing. However, the number of cattle per holding is increasing. Most cattle are reared predominantly indoors. However, some have access to pastures, and also some farms actually practice communal pastures in the mountains. In 2017, we exported 37,000 cattle and imported 32,000. The agriculture sector represents 1.2% of the gross domestic product, of which 26% is represented by the cattle industry. So on the left, you can see a map of Slovenia and the cattle density. The cattle population is most dense in the northeast of Slovenia, so the most cattle are in this region. However, there's quite a big population of cattle also in the center of Slovenia. On the right, you can see the autochthonous cattle breed in Slovenia called Jaka. So some factors that are affecting disease control in Slovenia are the import of fattening calves. So there are not enough calves, or calves are cheaper abroad. So a lot of farmers are importing calves from abroad. Like I mentioned before, some farms practice communal pastures, which facilitate the transmission of disease. And also a lot of farms are in close proximity to one another, which is the result of the limited farmland that is available. Another factor is also that the average age of farmer or the owners of the herd is quite high. So I think it's 57 years. And that means that they are less amenable to change and implementing control of the disease. Biosecurity is not considered as a top priority among our farmers, which is also a factor that facilitates disease control. And we have quite a high number of cattle movements for such a small population. So 150,000 cattle movements, not including import or export. So in Slovenia, we have 5 control programs for cattle diseases and 1 directive for Salmonellosis. So the first one is for bovine viral diarrhea. So the last systemic surveillance was done in 2003, and 50% of the holdings were positive for BVD. Since 2014, farmers can obtain an official BVD-free status, and currently only 21 herds have this free status. I won't go into detail about the control program because my colleague after me is going to present it in more detail. I can just say that it's voluntary, it's organized by the government, financed by the owners, and it's run on the national level, and the goal is herd level eradication. However, Slovenia is endemic for the disease. The next disease is infectious bovine Rhinotracheitis. So the last extensive surveillance was done in 2006, and 3.6% of herds were positive. Since 2015, herds can obtain an official free status of IBR. However, only 1 herd currently has the status. So the control program is based on serological testing of animals older than 24 months. And if positive animals are detected, the farmer can decide for two options for education. So either cooling, which is recommended in herds that have less than 10% of positive animals, or vaccination with a marker vaccine. The control program also involves biosecurity measures to prevent the reintroduction of the disease. The control program is voluntary. It's run by the government, financed by the owners, run on a national level. And again, the goal is herd level eradication, but the disease is endemic. So on this map, you can see all the herds that have either a BVD or an IBR-free status. You can see that they're distributed all over the country. The next disease is Enzootic bovine leukosis. So Slovenia has been free since 2005. It's gained official free status from the European Union. And the last reported outbreak was in 2006. We had 8 cases in imported cattle since then. The control program is based on serological testing of cattle older than 12 months. But we also conduct passive surveillance in the field and also at slaughterhouses and at necropsy. The control program is compulsory. It's run by the government and financed by the government, run on a national level, and the goal is proving country-level freedom for the disease. And we are, like I mentioned, officially free since 2005. The next disease is Bluetongue. The last reported case was in 2006. And I think the first outbreak was in the same year. The outbreak was caused by Bluetongue virus serotype 4. And since 2017, we have a compulsory vaccination program that's based on annual vaccination of all ruminants. So that means sheep, goats, and also cattle during the vector-free season. So that's between January and April. We also conduct surveillance based on sentinel animals, which are serologically tested twice a year. We also perform entomological surveillance for culicoids, which are the vector for the disease, on 10 locations across the country. And this helps us monitor the culicoid population. So when they start to reproduce in the spring, and to monitor their numbers during the summer. So the control program is compulsory. It's run and financed by the government, run on a national level, and the goal is control. And we are perceived free from disease because we haven't had a case since 2017. The next disease is Anthrax. The last reported case was in 2015, and the control program is based on passive surveillance. However, all suspicious cases have to be confirmed with a pathomorphological examination, a bacteriological examination, and with a real-time PCR. When the disease is discovered in a herd, it's followed by cooling and moving restrictions, and also hygienic measure in the stall. The animals that do not show clinical signs can be treated with antibiotics and also have to be vaccinated. So when a new case is discovered in a region, the Administration for Veterinary Services will outline an anthrax district. And in this district, all ruminants and all equids have to be vaccinated for 50 years, so against anthrax. And currently in Slovenia, there are 106 districts. You will see them in the next slide. I have a map. So the control program is compulsory. It's run by the government and financed by the government. It's run on a national level, and the goal is control. And we have sporadic disease status for this disease. So on this map, you can see all the anthrax districts in Slovenia. I think the last reported case, so the 2015 case, was in this region or this district. So like I mentioned, we also have a directive for Salmonellosis, which did not make or did not meet the criteria we set for an unregulated disease or a control program, according to our action, because it only conducts passive surveillance. So when a suspicion is made based on clinical signs, samples are taken, so rectal swabs, bedding material, and also feed. And if an animal dies, it has to go to necropsy, and bacteriological examinations are performed. So if a herd is positive, it is subjected to movement restrictions. It has to disinfect the stall. and the animals have to be treated with antibiotics. So the herd can regain its status with 2 negative bacteriological results. Slovenia's status for Salmonellosis is sporadic. So these statuses for the other diseases that we don't have a control program for are seen in the table. We have a similar disease status to our neighboring countries. However, Austria has a favorable status for IBR and BVD, and Italy has regions free of IBR or regions with control programs. And I think the region that is neighboring to Slovenia actually has a control program for IBR. So I'd like to mention also the public-private partnership. It's built up of the government. So this is represented by the Ministry for Agriculture and the Administration for Food Safety, Veterinary Services and Plant Protection. So the next thing is the veterinary services, which are represented by the veterinary faculty and the National Veterinary Institute. The public-private partnership also comprises of the veterinary associations, which are represented by the Slovenian Veterinary Chamber and also the breeders' associations. So in Slovenia, all the major breeds have their own associations, including the autochthonous Zika breed, and the beef breeds have the joint breeders' association. So for the control programs, all control programs in Slovenia are operated and run by the government, which provide the legal framework to obtain the free status. Diagnostics are performed by certified laboratories that are part of the National Veterinary Institute, which provide the knowledge and equipment to operate the control programs. The field work, such as sampling, vaccination, and annual health checks, are performed by private veterinary practices, which have a concession with the administration. So decision to implement a control program for the voluntary control programs is based on the owner. So in Slovenia, there are no industry-run or industry-financed initiatives to run a control program on a farm or to be free of a disease. So in the discussion, we try to discuss, so for the status of BVD and IBR, there are a lot of local spread of especially BVD because of the use of communal pastures. A lot of calves that are imported for fattening, like I mentioned before, are not checked for these 2 diseases, which could facilitate the reintroduction of the disease into free herds. And also when Slovenia became an independent country, we had a lot of state-owned farms that were quite big and had a high prevalence of BVD and IBR. And when they closed, they auctioned off the animals to all the family farms, and that really worsened the situation in the country. Like I mentioned, only a few herds have an official free status for IBR and BVD, and it's because the maintenance of the status is involved with additional testing costs. And the farmers don't see the benefit, and they don't have any privileged status compared to the herds without the status. So many farms have actually used the control programs to become free of the disease, so they have a superior health status. They just don't choose to maintain the status because it involves testing costs. So for Bluetongue, we had a lot of feedback from the farmers because there were reports from abroad that vaccination causes abortions, but abroad they used a live vaccine, which was actually proven that it could cause abortions, but we used the dead vaccine in Slovenia. So the government actually offered the farmers compensation if they could prove that the abortion was the result of vaccination. However, all the abortions that were tested, none had the Bluetongue virus in them. So I think there were just a few compensations paid out because of the vaccination, because animals got injured during the process of vaccination, not because of the vaccine. So we had no outbreaks since the start of the control programs. However, there were a couple of countries with Bluetongue outbreaks in the neighborhood. So I think Croatia, Serbia, Albania and also North Macedonia had cases during this period, but Slovenia did not. So the Salmonellosis directive is only based on passive surveillance. In Slovenia, most diarrhea cases are handled symptomatically, so animals are just not tested for Salmonellosis, and that's why we believe we could have more cases that are not being reported because animals are just given antibiotics and they're okay then. And also the directive involves strict measures after a suspicion is made. So farmers and also veterinarians are reluctant to report cases because they don't want to lose income or clients. So the future goal for Slovenia is to implement a compulsory national BVD and IBR control program and later to obtain a free status. This would facilitate the export of our cattle and also increase their value. The goal is also to implement a paratuberculosis control program. We have quite a favorable status now, but this might not be the case if action is not taken. Thank you for your attention. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.